Hi, Laura. Just kind of waiting for people to get logged in here. Got only about 4 or 5 logged in so far, so let's give those people a little bit more time. I'm going to ask you a question, or also type it in here. Did I give you guys my halfway through the semester? I cannot type. The people who are logged in so far, let me know. Did I give you guys my halfway through the semester talk last week by any chance? Sean, how you doing, bud? Just a yes or no would suffice. Anyone? Laura, come on. Help me out. Yeah, I did. We did. I did. Okay, good. Good. You get old and you forget, but it's something that's got to be done. Okay. Thank you. Okay, couple more minutes here. Hopefully get more people logged in. Then we'll get going. While we're kind of waiting for this last minute here, if you do the split screen and if possible, and go to your Canvas page for the new unit, the first page is Run Less and Eat More, and the title is Run Less / Eat More. If you can open that up, this talk might be a little bit easier to follow. Just giving people, Daniel, hey, just giving people a little bit more time here, so bear with me. Like I said, tell me you're here if you haven't done so already, and go ahead and open up your Canvas and take a look at that first page of the new module. Peter, how are you? Maria, how are you? I believe I got everyone down, so I think we're going to be good. All right, let's get rolling. 6:33. Let's not burn any more time. Okay, so new unit, fitness, and there's an inherent problem with fitness. In that it takes effort. Not only it takes physical effort, but it takes some mental effort. And so one of my goals when putting this unit together in the past is to make it digestible. In other words, make it to where you just simplify your understanding of food a little bit. You simplify your understanding of the body a little bit, not get too caught up in the details and the minutia of like the fitness industry and what it means to be fit and what eating healthy really means. There's a lot of that these days. There's just a lot of convoluted water. So I wanted to clear that up a little bit, but also hammer home some like very important physiological points about the body. There is a reason why you look the way you do. There is a reason why some of you burn fat really easily, and there's others that don't burn fat. And there's not one diet that is going to, or one lifestyle, or one pill, or one protein shake, or one anything that is a blanket fix all for everyone. It does not work like that. I I've known people who are vegetarians and they live a great life and they're happy and healthy. A lot of people who become vegetarians do not feel good and live healthy. There's certain restriction diets that work for some people and exercise programs that work for some people and just don't work for others. So the goal was to break through some of that, give you some good pertinent information, but also give you some scientific information, information that you can kind of implement now, and maintain just lifelong fitness. I mean, just maintaining a good body weight, maintaining a good BMI is probably 80% of the issues with longevity in America these days. So what am I saying? In other words, by just simply maintaining a decent physique, you statistically will do significantly better than people who don't. In other words, people who have high BMIs, high body fat percentages, high body weight, statistically will struggle way more, right? So we know that the American diet has to do with essentially the overconsumption of calories, right? And combination with a sedentary lifestyle, or a lifestyle where you're not doing enough physical activity, or you're not doing the right physical activity. So with that said, my message to you, my overall message is run less, eat more. And some of you are probably like, don't you mean eat less and run more? No, run less, eat more. Less cardiovascular type exercise and eat more. So what do I mean by that? Well, we got to address the fact that the body has two different types of muscle fibers. So, and I'm not talking about this muscle has this type of fiber, and this muscle has this type of fiber. All muscles in your body. So let's say the quad, the front of your leg, right? The quad, quadriceps has both type 1 and type 2 muscle fibers, right? And these muscle fibers are woven in together, right? Type 1 and type 2. Type 1 muscle fiber is primarily responsible for the type of activity that's done over long periods of time. It's basically what we call tension over time. In other words, those muscles are elongating and contracting. They have an eccentric and a concentric movement, right? As they work across their range of motion, right? So like let's say the bicep. The bicep has an eccentric and a concentric movement. As those go under load, there's one of two things that are going to happen. Either your type 1 muscle fiber is going to take over. That's an aerobic capacity. In other words, in the presence of oxygen, right? Then if your type 2 muscle fiber is going to take over, then it's the exact opposite. It has nothing to do with tension over time. It's not in the presence of oxygen. In other words, it's an anaerobic movement. Those movements are the big, strong, powerful movements that you see from let's say like a professional athlete. So how do I clarify this? When you think type 1 muscle fiber, think the type of muscle fiber that you see on a cross-country runner, or you see on a distance swimmer. Not necessarily a lot of muscle definition. Obviously, they're fit, but there's not necessarily a lot of muscle definition. A lot of times there's actually a layer of fat, particularly on swimmers' bodies. When you think type 2, think short burst of power. Think like an outfielder. If you're watching playoff baseball right now, an outfielder gets a ball hit over his head. He drops his head. He turns. He runs for 8, 20 yards, throws his hands up, catches the ball, plants his foot, and throws a 90-mile-an-hour ball back into the infield. All of that activity took maybe 15 seconds at the most, 10 seconds at the most. All of that physical exertion was done anaerobically. It was done with his type 2 muscle fiber. So the ability to throw a ball hard, or throw a ball far, or hit a ball hard, a lot of those power and performance sports, like a tennis serve, those are feats of strength. They're not feats of endurance, right? So Type 1 muscle fiber is your aerobic muscle fiber, your endurance muscle fiber. Type 2 muscle fiber is your strength and power muscle fiber. In other words, how much weight can you move on the bench press? How much can you squat? How far you can hit a baseball, so on and so forth. Training type 1 is very popular for people who want to practice lifelong fitness, but what a lot of people don't realize is there's some downfall to overtraining your type 1 muscle fiber. In other words, there's some downfall to always doing cardiovascular work or cardiovascular exercise as your only form of exercise. First and foremost, the adjustment for running, let's pick any cardiovascular activity. So let's say running or swimming, okay? Jogging, the elliptical, the treadmill, the stationary bike at the gym, right? These are all type 1 muscle fiber activities. And whenever people start doing that and they start getting in shape, the adaptation is always more. So the training sessions go longer and longer and longer. There are very few people who start off by running a mile and then they decide after a month or so of doing that, hey, I'm going to run the mile faster. No one really says that. Everyone says, well, okay, I'm going to run 2 miles now, and I'm going to run 3 miles now, and I'm going to run for an hour and a half. Like the time always gets extended. There's an issue there. First and foremost, the more you train your type 1 muscle fiber, the smaller your type 2 muscle fiber gets. In other words, your density of type 2 muscle fibers will decrease. Okay, so what does that technically mean? You start running a lot, you lose strength. When you start running a lot, you lose explosiveness and power. And there's some very compelling evidence that suggests that we need to have strength and power, especially as we age, which I'll get into in a minute. So you actually are counterproductive in gaining muscle. You actually, I mean, just ask Alex Rodriguez. When Alex Rodriguez, who's one of the highest paid baseball players in the history of the game, when he signed with Texas, he got one of the largest contracts in the history of baseball, if not in the history of sports. He felt the pressure. He started to run every single day. He felt he was working hard. He was going to earn his money, and he's going to run every single day. Well, if you look at Alex Rodriguez's numbers in Texas, they were going down. He did not have good years in Texas. And I forget what year it was. It was probably by year 2 or 3 into his contract. He had kind of bottomed out. He didn't have good numbers. He wasn't producing offensively like they wanted him to produce. I mean, back in the days, these were the days where like guys were hitting 40, 50, 60 home runs a year, right? So you gotta put up numbers, and he just wasn't putting up those types of numbers. He finally hires a trainer, and the trainer says, okay, what have you been doing? And he says, well, I'm busting my ass, man. I'm running, 4 or 5 days a week, 3 miles. And the trainer goes, whoa. Why would you do that? And because the trainer knows you start training your type 1 muscle fiber too much, it actually will make you weaker in the weight room. It'll diminish power. The other thing is people who engage in long cardiovascular activities, many people have a tendency to actually store fat, not burn fat. And this is evident amongst many people. Just watch them at the gym. It's not uncommon to see people who are heavy kind of be trapped in this, like they go to the gym, they do the elliptical, they realize that they can do more because they're fit, right? They're fit, but they're not trim and they're not muscular. A matter of fact, if you look at them, you think the person is kind of overweight, but yet this person could be on the treadmill for an hour, right? Literally for an hour running at a decent pace, and they look the same for long periods of time. You're telling your body, not only by the way you eat, which we'll talk about in a minute, but just by the exercise that you're doing, that it wants to store fat. And why fat? Well, guys, this is a number you need to know. Protein provides 4 calories per gram. Okay, so every gram of protein you eat, you get 4 calories. Carbs, carbohydrate. Every gram you consume, you get, just like protein, 4 calories. So it's 4 calories per gram. Fat comes in at 9 calories per gram, right? So calorically speaking, fat is the most dense. Fat provides the most amount of energy, right? So storing fat is something that your body's going to do if you undergo these kind of long, steady state activities, right? And that's just simply because your body's trained to go after the sugar first. As a matter of fact, your blood, your muscles produce glycogen. They produce a sugar, and it's for extra. It's for a larger carbohydrate profile, a sugar profile for your muscles to use, fuel for them to use. And if you do those long distance runs, a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people end up actually storing fat. So let's get away from type 1 and why it's inferior or why it's not as good. And I'm not dissing it. If you're a runner, look, the bottom line with exercise is whatever exercise you're willing to do, that's the best exercise for you. I mean, the bottom line is we don't have all the time in the world, most people, to dedicate their lives to like perfect fitness. If you're willing to exercise and whatever you're willing to do, then by all means do it. But I want to look good with my shirt off at the lake. When I'm out on the boat, I want to feel good. I'm sure there's people in this class, ladies, you want to look good in a certain pair of jeans. You want to look good in your bathing suit. Guys, same thing. When you go to the beach, you want to feel good about yourself. You don't want to be the one guy at the pool party that keeps his shirt on. There's a vanity to it. There's a way you look at your body, and most of us, the way you look at that body is you're actually looking at muscle definition. You're actually looking at a certain shape and a certain figure. And for most of us, that idea actually is the idea of a body that's built by type 2 muscle fiber. It's not built by type 1 muscle fiber. Okay. So how do I put this? Training type 2 muscle fiber is superior for a couple of reasons. Number one, it absolutely has the ability to give you the body that you want, the ideal body that you want, which is a big thing to understand. It's just kind of a big thing to recognize. Why? Because lifelong fitness isn't about, or just fitness in general, it's not about losing. In other words, most of you probably equate fitness to losing weight. And right there's a mistake. I've known plenty of people who have lost weight, but because they walk every day, but they do so much cardio that they don't realize that they've actually lost muscle in addition to fat, but they've lost muscle. Muscle and fat don't like to hang out with each other. So if you're actively looking to build muscle, you will burn fat. That's essentially what happens. I mean, just look at a steak. A good steak has what we call marbling. There's a lot of fat mixed in with the actual meat. No one wants to eat a fit cow, right? A fit cow has no marbling. It's kind of a tough piece of steak. When you're training, and when you're putting up weights or doing resistant body weight type workout, strength training type workout, you're displacing that fat. Okay. So immediately it gives you the goal that most people want, looking fit. The other thing is, like, let's say I took you to the weight room at Hancock and I put your body weight on the squat rack and I told you, Laura, I want you to do 4 times 10, or Sean, I want you to do, 4 times 8, whatever it is. How would you feel on Thursday morning or Friday morning? You would most likely be sore, right? So what actually happens is as those muscles are contracting and moving eccentrically and concentrically, right? So as the muscle elongates through its range of motion and as it contracts through its range of motion under pressure, those muscle fibers are rubbing together. They're actually tearing. You're causing micro tears in your muscle tissue, which is good. That's how you stimulate growth. You stimulate repair. What repair does is picks up your caloric burn. In other words, you get used to that 2-mile run. After your 15, 20-minute jog, your metabolic disturbance is now 0. In other words, your metabolism isn't necessarily going to pick up the rest of the day. Whereas if you go to the weight room and you start throwing weights around and you start actually strength training, you get sore. Your body has to repair itself throughout the day. You're burning calories at an accelerated rate, which just has a tendency to stimulate fat burn. It just really does. Because the other point that a lot of people don't really understand is, yeah, there's an optimal training zone on an elliptical, or when you're on a treadmill, they'll even say fat burning zone, 120 beats a minute or whatever it is. Physiologically, we burn most of our fat at rest. It doesn't necessarily take place a lot during physical activity. So now we're not only are we having to repair muscle, but we're resting. We're actively resting. And we're accelerating that fat burn. Ultimately, what we're looking at is we're looking at me trying to convince you to change the way you think about fitness. It's not about loss. It's not about having to lose anything, like not eat this type of food or not do this type of whatever, or we have to have this certain type of diet. You don't have to have any of that. What you really got to do is just start, for most of you, the time that you do take to run or do or go to the gym or engage in physical activity, make sure that the bulk of it is strength training. The bulk of it. In other words, your cardiovascular training, running on a treadmill, jogging, biking, all of that type of stuff, that shouldn't be more than 10% of your training. I mean, maybe 20%. Now, if you want to be a marathoner, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking about the people who live a normal life. They want to be fit and they want to feel good about themselves. I mean, shoot, you want to look good naked, right? You want to feel good in your own skin. That body comes from strength training and resistance training. That body doesn't come from type 1 muscle fiber exercise. Now, again, I'm not saying that cardio training is bad for you, especially if you have cardiovascular issues in your family. If both of your parents have had heart attacks or grandparents had strokes or whatever, make sure that you're getting plenty of cardio, but it can't be all of your exercise. As a matter of fact, it shouldn't exceed 20%. So run less, which sounds great, right? Mix in 4 times 10 push-ups until you can do a lot. Prisoner squats, lunges, just doing simple calisthenics is better for fat loss than just jogging 2 miles. That's for sure. Okay. And then the next point, eat more. What do I mean by that? If you had, let's say you were 45, let's say you're 45, 50 years old and you were 100 pounds overweight, or even 50, 60 pounds overweight. And you went to the doctor and they did a blood test and they did, they took your BMI, your body fat percentage, and, they took your blood pressure, and they came back to you and they said, look, man, you're 80 pounds overweight. You're 50 years old. Your blood pressure is up. It's 175 over, what's typical 120, it's 175 over 100. Your cholesterol's bad, blah, 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 and all this type of stuff. What they would do is they would tell you, they would put you on a diet, but the diet isn't necessarily a diet of restriction. What they would tell you is you're going to reduce your caloric intake by roughly 400 to 500 calories. So, the average male is probably consuming around 2,500 calories a day. That diet needs to go down to about 1,800, 2,000 calories. And they want you to do that by carbohydrates. So you'll eliminate a lot of carbohydrates. But the other thing they'll have you do is they'll tell you, take that 2,000 calories and I want you to spread it out over an 8-hour period or a 10-hour period. So in other words, you're going to eat 5 times over the next 10-hour period. So basically every 2 hours, you're going to have a 400 calorie meal. So why is that important? Why is eating more important? Well, first and foremost, I lost my pen. First and foremost, the bottom line is it takes calories to burn calories. That's just the truth of the matter. Your body, if you're not constantly consuming calories, your body will store fat because it's not sure if it's going to get food again, if that makes sense. So like these people wake up, and I'm probably talking to some of them right now, but you wake up, you skip breakfast, you have a sugary coffee drink, which gives you a small bump, right? And then you kind of settle in, and then you have like a 1,500 calorie lunch, a foot long Subway, chips and a soda. Boom. Up goes your blood sugar, up goes your metabolism. And then around 2:00, there's a crash. And then maybe another coffee drink, maybe a Red Bull, whatever, maybe nothing at all. You kind of just drag your butt through the rest of the evening. And then at dinner time, mom's got, some tortillas and asada and now, or spaghetti or, just family home cooked meal sometimes. That blood sugar goes back up and now you're sitting down. Right. Most cardiovascular incidents, in other words, most heart attacks, most strokes, and most issues with diabetics with their blood sugar being too high happens in the evening after dinner. It's because you consume a large meal and you sit down. So having these, like bombing your digestive system with 2,000 calories, 1,500 calories, and then nothing. And then bombing it again with 2,000 calories or 1,500 calories, what you're telling your body is a couple of things. Number one, you're telling it that you're not going to consistently feed it. And you're actually telling it that it needs to store fat. The other thing it's doing, the other reason why it's storing fat is because that metabolism is going down. In other words, your ability to just consume food as energy, your ability to convert food into energy becomes an issue. And that's evident, especially if you have weight around your midsection, right? If you have weight around your midsection, if you are overweight, you have a calorie burning issue with your body. Your body does not want to burn calories. It wants to store them. You have to be able to tell your body, burn calories. The way you can do that is by consistently eating throughout the day. Sensible 400, 500 calorie meals. So you wake up, you have, maybe some yogurt, a handful of nuts, a bowl of oatmeal, or an apple, a banana, and some eggs. 400 calories, boom. Then you have a reasonable snack, a reasonable lunch, a reasonable mid-afternoon snack, a reasonable dinner. You eat to fuel, not to fill, right? So you get away from those long hours of not eating and then bombing your system. What you're actually doing is you're throttling down on your pancreas when you do that, right? So your pancreas produces insulin. Insulin is a hormone that allows you to burn sugar for fuel. So what you're doing is you're revving that thing. You're just really like, you've got that throttle open. You're riding your pancreas. And a lot of people become insulin resistant that way. In other words, there's a lot of diabetics that got to be diabetic not by necessarily eating a lot, but the way they ate, like how they ate, stimulated fat growth. In other words, a ton of empty calories, a ton of processed food, not eating for long periods of time, and then bombing their gut. You're just telling your body the wrong thing, right? So the point tonight is a couple things. Number one, shift your mind from fitness is about losing. It's not about losing anything. It's about gaining. It's about gaining lean muscle mass, right? Feeling good, looking good has to do with the gain of strength, not the gain of cardiovascular endurance. Another case in point to support this. Maybe you guys have a grandparent or have known of like an elderly person to fall and break their hip. Why do a lot of old people fall and break their hip? And consequentially, they die. A lot of people, when they fall and break their hip when they're 85, 90 years old, that's what does them in. They don't have the strength to fight through it. You naturally lose both muscle and bone density as you age. The only way to fight bone and muscle density is through strength training. In other words, squats, lunges, all weightlifting promotes bone density. So just the ability to catch yourself from a fall, the speed that it requires for you to catch your balance and stop yourself from falling relates to strength. It doesn't relate to cardiovascular endurance, right? So it's crucial. It's so much, in my opinion, it's equally as important to hear that you need to do cardiovascular exercise as you need to do push-ups. In other words, don't skip the push-ups. Don't skip those. Don't skip the weight routine. Don't do that. So think, how do I gain lean muscle mass? Not necessarily how do I lose weight, okay? So again, just to quickly recap before I give you your assignment. Run less is about recognizing that there's two types of muscle fibers. Type 1, which represents your cardiovascular endurance. Excuse me, type 2, which represents your strength and your speed. Training too much type 1, you'll actually diminish type 2 or lower the ability of type 2 to be neurologically like engaged in activity. You also have the risk of increasing fat storage. Working on your type 2 muscle fiber, in other words, strength training, weight training, things of that nature. Not only are you promoting muscle growth and bone density, but what you're actually promoting is significant blood flow. Because when you get a range of motion, you get muscular tension through that range of motion, there's blood going to all of that bicep. There's blood going to all of that part of the body. Prostate cancer for men, a lot of people equate that to just being overweight, but the real issue with prostate cancer with men is a lack of blood flow. So how do you get blood flow to the prostate? Squats, leg exercises, open up those hips, be flexible. Be flexible through the range of motion, the ROM. You do that, you have good blood flow. Blood flow means food, oxygen, repair, getting rid of toxins, getting rid of cancer. You need that blood flow. Okay. So run less, and then we have eat more. What I really mean by eat more is shrink the amount of time that you're eating to no more than an 8 to 10 hour window, no more. In other words, if you eat a meal at 8 o'clock in the morning, the latest you're going to eat is 6 o'clock in the evening. You're not going to eat after that, right? But inside that 8 to 10 hour window, divide your calories up. Just spread your calories out. Get your metabolism up. Get it leveled out throughout the day. Get rid of that 2 o'clock feeling. If you have the 2 o'clock limp feeling, you're not eating right. That's a deficiency, right? And a lot of you, again, if you have that that weight in your midsection, especially at such a young age, you've got a calorie burning problem. You got to start burning calories. Like, exercise your system, get it going, even your digestive system, flex it a little bit, make it work in a different way. Don't wake up and not eat anything, then bomb yourself, not anything, then bomb yourself and go sit down. You're teaching your metabolism a lazy life, right? You're making your metabolism be lazy. You don't want your metabolism to be lazy. You want that metabolism, even when you're lazy, you want your metabolism to be working properly, right? Okay. Here's your lecture question. I want you to Google, or whatever search engine you use, right? I just say Google. I think most people probably just say Google. Google, how do I lose fat? Now, by doing this, you're going to get a bunch of ads, but I want you to find an article. Doesn't matter what the article, where it's from. I want you to read that article, and then I want you to list 3 to 4 things and explain how that article tells you to lose fat, right? Like, is it through diet? Is it through drinking tea? Is it through this type of exercise, or blah, blah, blah? What's their 3 or 4 main points? And then I also want you to I want you to also send the link, right? So this assignment, your lecture assignment, list 3 or 4 things, explain them, send the link, right? And all you got to do is Google, how do I lose fat? Okay. Don't read ads, read an article. Okay. Questions? We good? Laura, Peter, Daniel, Monica, Oscar, Anthony, we all good? Yeah, no, maybe not. Do your homework, do your work. Next week. Deuces.